Next, to lead our next panel, we have Dr. G. Venkatesh, the Executive Director and Chief Technology and Strategy Officer of Sasken. Venkatesh started his research career at India's premier research institute, TIFR Bombay, then moved to the Computer Science Department of IIT Bombay, where he spent 8 years teaching. He then transitioned to Sasken Communications when it was founded in the early 1990s, and he was the leader, headed up the leadership in wireless. Venkatesh is currently responsible for driving Sasken's growth in adjacent areas, with medical electronics being the area of focus. Venkatesh has also been an adjunct faculty in IIM Bangalore for the last 8 years, where his interests revolve around technology development and management, collaborative innovation models, and applying game theory to strategic thinking in the technology industry. Venkatesh is a graduate in electronics from IIT, Institute of Madras, a PhD in computer science from TIFR Bombay, and is a fellow to the Indian National Academy of Engineers. Venkatesh is actively involved in a number of academia and industry associations, such as the Telecom Council of CII, INAE Forum for Microelectronics, the Center of Excellence in Wireless Tech at IIT Madras, the Indian Association for Research in Computer Science, and working groups of Ministry and Com and IT, NASCOM and ISA. So quite a illustrious career. So welcome me, join me in welcoming him.
Can I call the panelists on stage? Mr. Bedi, Samir Savarkar of Neurosynaptic, Yogesh Patil of Biosense, Srikanth of Prognosis, Shyam Banerjee of I2I Solutions, and Clint, our President.
Nice to meet you.
So I have the tough job of sitting between Anish Chopra's wonderful talk, which really invigorated all of us, and lunch. And in this panel, actually, what we want to look at is the small and medium businesses in India who have been making some progress. We have actually 4 SMBs today, 2 of them with moderate experience. We can call them startups, 2-3 year experience, Shyam and Biosense, Yogesh Patil. And we have 2 with reasonably longer experience. They've been around for like 7 or 8 years. So we have 2 different categories of small and medium businesses. And then, of course, we have Mr. Bedi, who would represent, I guess, the government and academia on the panel. And we have Clint, of course, who is going to represent Continua and also what's going on in the rest of the world. I just will make a few opening remarks. And then after that, what I'd like is that each of the panelists says a little bit about the challenges, at least the small and medium businesses, what challenges they are facing, what are their expectations from an organization like the Continua Alliance. And then I can direct some questions to them, and then we can have a discussion, and then we'll throw the floor open for questions from the audience. Now, I was told yesterday, after I was in another forum yesterday, and I was told that the world middle class population, you can define middle class in any way you want, but the total population of middle class in the world is roughly like 2 billion people. Let's say it's like $5,000 a year, whatever it is we want to say. 2 billion middle class people in the world. And of that, we might have like 10 or 15%, depending on how you count it, in India. But what is interesting really is that there is another 5 billion people who are below this middle class level. There are 5 billion people. And if you take those 5 billion people, those are the 5 billion people who represent a category where we have to create solutions affordable. Right? We have to create affordable solutions. So affordable healthcare, for example, to that 5 billion. And if you look at that 5 billion people, we have roughly 1 billion of them in India. So you have a larger percentage of that 5 billion in this country. So question is, can India leapfrog? can it take a lead in providing solutions for this segment? This is the question, I think, in affordable healthcare that one will look at. And we have 4 small and medium businesses which have tried to make a start, I guess. And there are many more in this room who have tried to make a start on trying to create affordable solutions for healthcare. So that's basically the context that which we want to discuss it. And one of the ways to make things affordable really is by expanding the number of people who come into the sector. And you can expand the number of players in any sector if you go in an industry from solutions to vertical to horizontal. As a company that's believed in standards for a long time in Sasken, we have seen how GSM, for example, when it came on the scene as a standard, we participated in the 3G standards, for example. We have seen how GSM and 3G standards, how they changed the scene, right? We've seen today that 700 million subscribers we have in India for mobile phones. It's a remarkable transformation that has happened in the world of mobile phones in India. And primarily it's because of the standards. You've seen how Wi-Fi has proliferated primarily because of standards. Bluetooth has proliferated because of standards. We heard about USB and others which have proliferated because of standards. So one way to get this kind of scale for affordable healthcare in this country really is by standards which convert vertical industries into horizontal, allows a lot of more players to get in, and because of network externalities and so on, you suddenly see an explosion in something new. And so we want to see actually in this panel the group discuss a little bit about some aspects like this. What is it that will help these small and medium businesses to scale so that they can become success stories like the ones we heard today, just in the earlier talk? And what is it that Continua can do for it and what the government can do for it? So we'll start by having some opening statements by each group member on what is it that we think, what are the challenges we are seeing and what is it that we think that Continua can do. Clint, you want to start?
Right. Well, standards-based solutions are the way to start.
Sorry, maybe just introduce yourself. I think Clint you have done, but all the others just do a short introduction of yourself before you start.
Hi everyone, I am Dr. Yogesh. I am co-founder of Biosense. Hello? Yeah. Hi, I'm Dr. Yogesh. I'm co-founder of Biosense Technologies. We have invented a medical device.
Yogesh Patil is an interesting background. He is a doctor who went and did an MBA from IIT. Bombay. And then after that, he started a company. So quite a different, very interesting profile.
So basically, we started this when we were in med school, me and my room partner. And we now call ourselves Biosense Technologies. We have developed a medical device which can measure your hemoglobin in completely non-invasive manner. So we saw a problem of 1.62 billion anemics in the world, according to WHO. And the treatment is available free of cost. Still, the NFHS2 and NFHS3 survey in India showed that there is 8% increase in anemics. So, we propose our solution as to tackle this battle with anemia. And we are a team of 5 with diversified background from management, medicine, design, and engineering. Thank you.
I'm Samir, and I'm a co-founder of a company called Neurosynaptic Communications. We work, the mission of the company really is to enable access to the rural and remote areas for affordable healthcare with the help of technology. So we have been in this space since more than 8 years now, and today are a part of some of the largest rural e-healthcare networks in the country, as well as looking at a few areas overseas in the developing countries where there are similar challenges that we see, though not exactly same. So that's as a brief introduction. Thanks.
Hello, good morning. I'm B.S. Bedi, product of IIT Delhi, and then from 77 have been part of the government. Basically looking at, among other things, one area was always with me to promote health electronics and health IT in all sense from Ministry of Communication and IT. And in this responsibility, the major focus has been lately on health informatics. From 2006 onwards, I have been part of as advisor to CDAC, Center for Development of Advanced Computing, especially to their health informatics groups, which specialize in telemedicine, health management information systems, and all other aspects of health informatics. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sham Banerjee. I head a company called I2I Telesolutions, and we are kind of maniacally focused on innovative solutions for the telemedicine market. We are like the Federal Express of medical data and imaging. If you like, we take medical data and images from various medical equipments, like, for instance, Sameer's Remedy, for instance, and we compress the data, we securely send it to doctors who can then report on it. That's our fundamental business model. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shrikant. I represent Prognosis Medical Systems. We co-founded this in the year 2004. Thanks to ISRO, with the help of which we were able to contribute to the society in installing more than 300 locations where we have done projects. Many of those in the state of Maharashtra, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh. And while doing so, we always thought that we have to go on with adding more solutions. And we've now added solutions which is in the chronic disease management, integrating with various medical devices for chronic disease management. And also in the health areas where we are concentrating more on the communicable disease like malaria using simple SMSs, and also adding mother and child tracking system for the mobile health ASHA workers. This has been our background. We've seen this for the last 7 years. It's been an interesting experience, and I see a lot of opportunities coming in now, and this year has been a fairly good conference that I've seen, and I see that a lot of opportunities coming up. Thank you.
Clint, you can start.
Okay, great. So I would say my advice for the SMBs is do what you're good at and get ready to partner. We see too many companies that are trying to do everything. We all know this is going to be a very important, very big market, but you've got companies that are making sensors that then, that's what they're good at, but then they try to make the gateway. So they go and they get a 3G module and they build it, then they have the back end. So then they go negotiate with the operator to get the data through, and they build their own back end, and they think, I'm going to have the best mouse system, not even a mouse trap. The problem is there are lots of companies that are better, many of those different components, and you'll waste away lots of operating expenses thinking about the whole piece. So find out what you're good at and partner. This is a great industry to partner in. I've seen it happen a variety of different ways. I know one company that has a very good sensor. They have a good middleware. In some cases, they use that on their own if it's the application they're great at, which is wellness. But then when you take that and use it for chronic care, they're not so good at that. So they'll allow others to purchase that sensor and even license that technology. So that would be my best advice at this point, is really make sure that you create an ecosphere here. And this isn't a sales pitch for Continua either, but really, I've seen this happen to so many companies where they don't know what the competition is doing. And even if you're making that sensor, you better keep your eyes open because someone in China is also working on that. So this is really, it's a place where we all need to collaborate, where the rising tide will raise all the ships, because we know there's a huge need out there, but it's just a matter of not getting stuck in that trap that you have the best end-to-end system.
So, thank you, Clint, for that comment. We are actually doing the same. We are the sensor people. We are the developer of the technology, and I don't know how to operate an Android mobile. I find it really difficult. So Sameer here, so what we are doing, we are developing an OEM module. So all of the telemedicine company who already have their telemedicine equipment in place can get our module and just plug it in and get your hemoglobin, heart rate, and oxygen saturation as well with our sensor. So what we find difficult in telemedicine is there are not much bigger player in India, as only two of them are sitting here. And I don't know why, because many of them are struggling with business model, or many of them not trying to get money from the rural healthcare. I don't know how they are, I don't know how they are planning their Excel sheets. But still, I'm really confused. That's why we are not only focused on telemedicine, because our product, main product is standalone. And we are afraid of going to telemedicine just because of this, that we don't know how uh, is it viable for us to make a standalone product only for telemedicine and invest a huge amount of money and then get a return on it. So I think Samir here, me and Samir are quite in touch with 2 years now, and Samir is guiding through all the way of development of Biosense. So I think we need more of neurosynaptics and I2Is here, not only 3 or 4. To make sensor people to think telemedicine as a target segment.
What would you look for, Yogesh, from an alliance like Continua?
So I would look for a mentoring network, because we don't know how to transfer the data, build the analytics, and we don't want to. But what someone like Samir or Shrikant or Sham sir can do is talk with young guy like us, young company like us, and see if it is making sense for both of us. There's no harm in talking. I don't know why there's resistance in, say, talking to a smaller company, because they were small at a time. They have grown up. We will do the same. So I think Continua can help us get us a mentoring network like Surendra sir, Rajendra, and yourself. So I think the mentoring network is, that's what is needed for an entrepreneur. They have everything. They have passion. They'll figure out the cheapest way of doing things. They'll figure out everything, rest of the world, but they don't know where to focus on, where to use that passion and utilize it in an effective way. That's where a mentor would come in. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Yogesh. I'll basically, I would say, deviate a little bit from the theme of the conversation here. I would like to bring out certain questions and maybe throw it to everyone here on the panel, as well as the audience in general. Let me bring also a little bit of a context into what I'm going to say. Since all or almost all of the work that I am involved in involves work in the rural healthcare space, we have a very well known situation here in the rural healthcare space, where you have about 70% of the population which stays with an access to about 24-25% of the medical facilities all over. And one of the huge problems that is faced actually is of access, is of affordable care, is of quality care, and various delivery channels that are really missing in these areas. So I'm going to start with saying that standardization, of course, has various important advantages that they bring along. They give a common platform for all of the players and even playing field. It gives a very good clarity in terms of people who are actually asking for those solutions, in terms of getting what they need to meet their or satisfy what they require, getting the care to the end patient. Now, however, having said this, Neurosynaptics approach has from the beginning been whether a standard or to look at a standard or take a view of a standard in terms of whether it is inclusive or exclusive. Let me clarify what I mean by saying this. We say if the largest mass of masses of the country are getting access to the facilities that are supposed to be there with the help of these standards, then they are really inclusive. If they are not, if they are getting excluded to have access to these healthcare facilities or various other facilities, then we call them exclusive standards. For example, if you set up a standard which requires certain infrastructure which is not existent, and we have been sort of slow at improving the infrastructure in these areas that I'm talking about, then you're virtually excluding these people from getting access to those technologies and the benefits that those technologies can bring in. And that's one of the things that I would like us to have a look at in terms of how we can sort of judiciously use the standards, have certain policies in place, have certain things in place which allow or do not disallow the benefits of technology to be reaching to places where they are needed most. That's the first one. The second point that I would like to actually also mention here is about the priority of introduction of various of these things. And to my right, Mr. Bedi has done some very commendable efforts and whole of the TSI, in fact, to try and standardize the telemedicine related requirements. However, I'm sad to point here or note here that there is no standard guideline in terms of even the medical devices standards like the manufacturing processes or the certifications of the devices, which are even the performance and safety, the safety and the performance in that order basically existing, which have been taken up somewhere by the central bodies to be adopted across. And so we still see various requirements coming up from institutions, healthcare institutions, right from the government to the private, which have selective mentions of some of the policies and standards that they need as a part of their network. Now, I think it's very important for the devices and solutions to be interoperable, but it's even more important for them to be first safe and then giving the performance that they are expected to provide. And so I think there needs to be a whole timeline established in terms of how we take up these things as policies, how we implement them, how we harmonize, make sure that all of these are in place. Not only the interoperability, but in the larger context, even the devices, standards, they're in existence, but they need adoption. And I think Dr. Bedi will, of course, cover a little bit on a long process, a set of processes that we need to go through to be able to reach there. The third point that I would like to actually cover is how, at what point, at what cost are these coming to the user? And of course, there would be definitely a lot of case studies which would say that in long run, it's definitely much more useful, cost beneficial to the people who are using it. But however, we need to really see that and analyze that. I hope that is done. One last question that I would also put in here for a larger discussion is, lot of, as Yogesh mentioned a little earlier, we see a lot of talk about the affordable healthcare being put in place. There are a lot of companies who claim to be working on the affordable models and so on. Now, is this standard going to be a barrier for these companies to really bring out their solutions, because they're all cash strapped, they're all fund strapped, and I have heard that multiple times, including the government funding agencies that have been supporting various of the organizations as well as the private investors. So is it really going to be a barrier, or is it really going to be a path for global market access for these companies? And I believe that's where Continua has a lot of role to play. In terms of getting the stakeholders, making sure that they have these access to the global markets with the help of these interoperability. So the questions really are, how do we remove these entry barriers for the SMBs? I heard there is something in progress for the emerging markets, which is a special sort of a package in terms of membership. But I would like to know how we can work out a model where standard STQC kind of organizations take up ETDC, ERTL. We have all infrastructures for testing that have been built by the government. How the government can actually take this up and help the SMBs in terms of allowing them to get to the stage for the global market access, and make sure we do not burden certain segments. How can we make sure that we do not burden certain segments who are not really ready for introduction of these technologies till the time they get ready for the same thing? So, and how can we allow the market to decide the value of the quality that is sought? So these are some of the thoughts that I thought we can share in terms of a larger discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Samir. Bedi, you want to also respond to his comments while you actually make your opening statement?
I think I will start with two personal experiences. As I said, my job, I was heading medical electronics and tele-health program of Government of India for quite some time. It was early, in 90s we realized that, telehealth makes a lot of sense. And towards end of the 90s, we started some platform development program. You see, there were very few vendors at that time. I think neither Prognosis was there, neither Televital. Only thing is, I think somebody in perhaps Gujarat state was doing something. But we needed some very powerful platforms to develop this area of telemedicine, and we supported our government agencies and some IIT Kharagpur and CDACs. So in context of that, and then you see that there were 6 major hospitals which were associated, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Sanjay Gandhi Postgraduate Institute, and PGI Chandigarh, to be partners in coming out with a real good platform. In that process, we bought certain equipment to show that, you know, the data from those medical devices can straight away be ported to computers and record it and mine that. In this context, we bought ECG. The ordinary analog ECG used to cost something like 10,000. To get a device which will couple with a computer, we shelled out 90,000. In those days, it was about $3,000. Just to couple it to computer, to interconnect. Just imagine, you know, when we talk about continuous effort, you know, to come out, how at that time itself that was making relevant. And subsequently, when the products came out, and we started pilots. That means in different states but only thing here were 3 different organizations came out with different platforms. In somebody was chosen to do pilot programs in Tripura, West Bengal, others in Tamil Nadu, somebody in Punjab and Himachal Pradesh. At stage came when my secretary, Rajiv Tajja, he asked me, can, you know, if I have set up a system in West Bengal, I want the same hospital to link up to Chennai or Kerala, can you do it? Answer was no. Now, question is, if you want to increase your reach, do you have to invest all the time? If you have invested somewhere and the other side doesn't have the same this thing, immediately that was the time, you know, we started embarking on a program to come out with guidelines and standards. Obviously, a lot of work was done, and those you know, bringing all the stakeholders, whosoever was there from ministry, we could put up guidelines. Dr. Satyamurthy is there. I was the member secretary for that technical working group, and in 2003, on telemedicine, we came out with some kind of guideline. Is another process, you see, you can come out, and also we suggested what kind of equipment should go, what kind of specifications of medical equipment, which was relevant for telehealth and e-health program, should also be there. But it is a very, very evolving field. And only thing is, you know, more and more need was felt that they should interoperate, you know, things. And here, you know, I find that is a continuous effort, you know, we go global. How the devices can interlink, they can, you know, seamlessly talk to other devices, to the systems which when we are on the going to use ultimately internet, it makes very large sense. I think I will come to, and I think Samir, he has raised the issue that yes, there should be some mechanism by which, you know, there should be laid down guidelines. It is one thing to lay down guidelines. Only thing is, you know, in those days also we resorted to some of the world famous organization like IEEE standards and something, whichever was available. But I do feel that yes, we do require a very standard guidelines where, you know, the people who are especially from small and medium business, that they have certain things available, and whenever they come out with the products, they should not have problem, you know, if they go to one system, they have to devise and customize those devices according to the need of one user in one region and go to another region and again put in that kind of effort. So here I feel that the effort which is being devoted by Continua Alliance, it will really make sense. And I think other issues, you know, once or a government takes some steps to bring experts together to make recommendation, how those efforts can be translated into really abiding rules, that is another matter for which there may be a very difficult but painstaking but sure method if it is undertaken. I think I'll talk about that if there are other issues which come out about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Bedi. Thank you, Dr. Bedi. Just a few points I'd like to add to what's already been said. First of all, I'd like to start off in a very, very optimistic note. I think the market opportunity for telemedicine, if you define telemedicine and healthcare access to the majority of the population in this planet, which probably about 60% of people require access. So it's a huge market. And people need medical attention, doesn't matter, what race, what country, whatever it is. Amazingly, when we go target a particular region geographically, to go and help out in some kind of a telemedicine project, we seldom see competition. It is not a saturated market. You can throw a dart on the globe and say, I'm going to go attack that problem in that part of the world, and very rarely you will see competition. What you will see, very difficult working models, very difficult problems to resolve, and that's where I find the Indian market being so exciting, because we have some of the most some of the best surgeons, some of the best physicians in this world, and they are the earliest adopters of technology. So in a way, sometimes I'm glad that we don't have a lot of statutory, guidelines getting in the way of doctors who just simply want to save lives. And they do it very well, I'm glad to say. And we want to help them. The problem, though, is that with all this exciting stuff going on, there is lack of funds. I totally agree with Samir. You will hardly find a venture capital company that will dive in with us and say, hey, let's go, find out what the problems are in this remote area and let's go resolve that. It is difficult to monetize. The only source of money for these, kind of projects is really the government. And we've been very lucky to work on some of these government projects. But it is a private public partnership model that is currently addressing the base of the pyramid, the bottom 60% of this market. I think we need, bigger players to come in, and help out. But I actually think that, the opportunities are just, limitless right now. In terms of Continua Alliance, in terms of interoperability, absolutely. Interoperability, especially in the kind of work we do, where we are moving medical images and data from machine A to a Dr. B or a Dr. C on different platforms like a PC or a BlackBerry or an iPhone or whatever. We are constantly battling these interoperability issues. The thing, though, is that in terms of interoperability, it is also a very exciting time to be in this field, because I think it's going to be very difficult to kind of come up with a guideline that says this is the standard. I think the approach that Continua is using, where you let the market define, you let the customers define, I think is the right approach. Because, in our business, what we get to do is we get to look into the kitchen units of a lot of different companies. We are, sometimes very large companies like GE. When you look at some of the, products that they are making, like the Vscan device for echo, cardiogram, we get to work with those kind of devices. We get to work with, companies like Neurosynaptics, for instance. So we get to see a lot of kitchen units. And the exciting thing is, they're all in this phase of, hey, let's do something new, let's do something great, let's solve this problem. We happen to be working, for instance, with a company that's making wireless ECG. They basically want to replace the cable. And just think about, all the statutory, regulatory legal issues that would be, required to have to go through to make something like that happen, at least in our lifetime. I mean, we cannot wait that long. So I think we need money, we need, of course, guidelines, but we need probably interoperability before we need a lot of guidelines. At least that's my personal viewpoint. Thank you.
When we started Prognosis in 2004, we were looking out for some document which is available for us to start what we need to look at. Thanks to ITIH, we found that to be the only document that was addressing the standards that was driving towards telemedicine. And when we developed our software, it was more in line with these standards because we believed that's the one which we need to address in the country. And that was the first step which we took for us to qualify and participate in tenders that was floated from ISRO. And that was the first challenge what we had. At the time of finalizing, we had another hurdle that came in our place. I would not say it's an hurdle, but it was more like looking at it in a longer perspective, which was interoperability. There was another vendor which had already qualified, and we had to interoperate with the other system for exchange of patient information and medical data. And we did that talking to these two companies talked and then came up with this interoperable and showcased this to ISRO. That's when we got qualified as the second vendor for ISRO. While we were doing this, we always believed in standards. We always looked at DICOM, HL7, ICD codes, and LONC codes, which was also part of ITH standards those days. And we took these steps for us to work as a telemedicine company. Going forward, we always believed in only developing software and not going anywhere. We integrate with many medical devices, both waveforms as well as images. Images were never a challenge for us because we knew the output protocols from these imaging devices, which is very properly defined, either DICOM or JPEG or MPEG or AVI or one of these standards. But the real challenge for us was to work with companies which had proprietary formats, especially in the waveform, when we look at ECGs and various other multi-parameter monitors. We did develop a solution for ambulance monitoring, linking up the ambulance to the specialty care, transmitting real-time data, which included ECG, pulse oximetry, blood pressure, temperature, and respiration. We did demonstrate this to 108 as for their ambulance projects, but unfortunately, we had an hurdle because they already had a defibrillator inside the ambulance. And we could not get the output protocols from the defibrillator, hence we could not complete this project. Going forward, yes, continue as is what we are also looking at, basically because we always believed in these standards. But it should be affordable, that's number one. Number two, as far as projects which are happening in the country in the space of telemedicine, there are not many projects that are going on. Though there were a draft telemedicine that came in 2005, linking up primary health centers, which was level 1, community health centers, and tertiary care hospitals. I only saw that as a draft, and I don't think that has gone anywhere forward. And companies like us need to look this as the future so that all of us as companies can do some projects in many states. So this is what I feel needs to happen along with Continua. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just open the floor, but before we get to questions from the floor, I want to just raise two issues that came up in the two talks, one by Pratap Reddy and the other one in Anish Chopra's talk. So I just want to highlight those two issues and then we'll open up the floor for questions. The first one is, which Pratap Reddy rightly brought out, is the role of the doctor in this whole thing. If the doctor is not convinced, is not involved, nothing works. This is what actually primarily he brought out, and he gave this personal experience of what his implementation issue was in Apollo Group hospitals. So Clint, I want to understand from you first, Continua in the US, what is the role of doctors in the alliance? What's the role of hospitals in the alliance? and what we should be guarded about and what we should do in India to make sure the same thing happens here?
I think I can speak to it probably with Qualcomm, from Qualcomm perspective and Continuum perspective, and it's that much of what we're looking at is personal health, and doctors are, many of them are afraid of too much data. What happens if I didn't see some reading that came through? What happens if the patient calls me in the middle of the night? So I have a great example that something that just happened this morning. I've got has anyone ever seen this AliveCor ECG reader? This is basically a skin that goes on the phone. It's inexpensive. I don't think I'm allowed to say how much, but you should see it here at some point. Well, there's an application here, and right now I'm part of a pilot with a cardiologist, the head of cardiology at USC, and the head of the inventor who was a CTO at GE. So right here, you're about to see a one-lead ECG. So I've been shipping these up 5-10 times a day. I've been giving them to people just for fun. And so what's happened is they saw one signal last night, and both of them emailed me and said, tell that person they should call their doctor. So it's not diagnostic, but it's, hey, we saw something. Now, these are very progressive doctors, but this is a type of application that will improve health. You've got to find the doctors that are not going to be frightened, and or what you need to do, we need to build mechanisms in for doctors, and part of that will be a call center. I was with some other doctors. We were showing them another home monitoring system that included ECG. We should have never started with ECG. We should have started with weight and blood pressure, because at first they thought, great, but on the other hand, when you move around with an ECG lead, you get a little bit of pollution in there. So at first they loved it, then they said, whoa, again, what happens if a signal comes through that's polluted? Or what happens if they call me all night? What happens if they keep getting frightened? Then we realized that there needs to be a buffer. What you need to do is put a call center in there, an algorithm, most likely a call center that would answer the questions. And then you need to market it as a quality of life issue for the doctor. So a lot of this is just positioning. What you tell the doctor is, okay, go, we're going to send your patient home with this, but we've got trained technicians that will help. So there are lots of different ways to look at it with doctors, but in some cases, it's going to be it's going to be progressive doctors that begin to offer these services as wellness, not necessarily as diagnostic, as monitoring, not interventive.
And would any of the companies want to share your experience of dealing with doctors and trying to get your products accepted by them?
I'm sorry? Oh, do you? Okay.
I have a point to add to this. Many times, we used to promote symptomatic event recorders for a long time from a company called Instrumedics from US. What we found many a times from doctors is that single lead is not sufficient. We need multiple leads. But for arrhythmias, as you are aware, that a single lead is more than sufficient. That was one of the reasons why you still have 12 lead going. When we actually started promoting this patient monitoring in ambulances, they said they want a 12 lead. But just imagine a patient being hooked up with a 12 lead, a 10 lead cable on him. It's going to take a lot of time. It's not going to, but believe it, I mean, many of the doctors used to say that we need a 12 lead, not a single lead. That was one of the reasons why, I mean, and you do not have many electrophysiologists in the country today. We used to sell this in 1994, and from then onwards till now, the number of electrophysiologists have not increased at all. Though you have many cases of palpitation and patients with this kind of problems. But that's been a problem as far as single lead is concerned.
Yeah, with single lead, you can pick up 80% of the events. And so then we come back to, especially in India, when you talk about the cost-benefit ratio and the equipment, an inexpensive 30-day post-op monitoring kit could be this and a pedometer, so that you know that they're walking enough. It could go all the way up to a scale, a blood pressure cuff, and all FDA pieces of equipment. So that's one thing to keep into consideration. And then with your go-to-market strategy, when you're working with doctors, if you find that doctor that says he has to have a 12 lead in every case, you better find another doctor who's going to work with you. So that's the other key. Don't, in addition to collaborating, don't hit a brick wall and think that, and let that stop you.
Yogesh, you want to share any of your experiences with doctors? Especially since you deal with blood, right? Anemia and all that. So
basically, I'm a physician too. So I never had a problem with working with doctors because my teachers were, I involved them at the very right, at the beginning of this project. So Dr. Sanjay Oak, who is Dean of KM Hospital, Dr. Ravi sir, who is Dean of Nair Hospital. They are too supportive, and many a times I get afraid that they demand too much. You must do a trial of 1,000 patients. We have this much patients because my investigation needs only a blood collection, which is already being done in pathology. I just need to test that patient on my device, and it's non-invasive, so there's no harm. And again, it's battery operated, so there's no electric shock as such. So, but I do agree that many of the doctors are not that proactive in terms of adopting new technology like ours. What I would like to suggest is, look, if you are, all of us will be making money at some point of time, though right now my graph is in negative, and I don't know about Samir, but if you want to, if you will be making money, then why not pay them? Because they are also involving, they are involved. Why are you expecting them to work for free? Why are you expecting them, every doctor as an angel doctor? You just have to think about his time, think about an incentive system. Even in telemedicine, just because it is great and it will be helping patients and monitoring data, I don't think it will work until unless you figure out the incentive system for the physician. That's how it is. It is a very competitive world. You have to get your feet in the really hands in the dirt, because there's the system is, if you look at the pharmaceutical system, you just have to push your tablets, push your, it doesn't matter to him whether it's costing 40 or 60 bucks. Anyways, whatever he's prescribing, patient will get it. So you have to think of some kind of incentive model, why he should use your device.
Shyam, you want to add something to it? And then we can have Bill.
I think Yogesh raises a very good point, one of remuneration. I think the exciting part about telemedicine, especially in markets like India, China, this is, first of all, this is where the customers are, by the way. In any market, you have to follow the customers. And I think we need to distinguish between diagnostics and screening. The first, intersection with the patient that all actually doctors want, even if they're not very tech savvy, is they really want to figure out a way of screening more and more patients, that, in a way such that when the patient gets to their, in front of them, sitting in front of them, they can actually monetize that transaction. So the whole idea of screening to get to those 2 or 3 cases of glaucoma or some retinal examination or some retinal surgery is the problem that telemedicine begins to solve. And I think, my friend here, Prognosis, is absolutely right. Because if you're in a life-threatening situation in an ambulance being taken to the, hospital, a single lead ECG is not going to hack it. And no doctor who's going to be diagnosing the patient and maybe operating on them, they're not going to really, depend on, some kind of a, device like a cell phone or whatever we might have. However, to get to that patient, to do some early screening, to do some early, preventative, assessment, absolutely. As many, smartphones we can enable out of the 900 million that we have is a step towards that monetization that Yogesh talks about. Because at the end of the day, it's a screening process that leads to some kind of, operative procedure or whatever, the hospital can provide, and that's where they make the money. So we haven't really encountered that much of an incentivizing, problem if we look at it from this point of view.
How to convert into a marketing tool for the doctor.
Absolutely.
Okay. I think I will just narrate a couple of public health experiences. There were 2. You see, Dr. Mishra, I don't think he's here. The first full-fledged hospital information system in a super specialty hospital. I will narrate my experience there. You see, that HI was evolved by one of my centers at that time from Pune. And the director, Dr. Bhandari, was heading SEPGI. And he was very keen on an IT savvy. And it was a comparatively new hospital. The whole system was developed and installed. But here, the usage, one method, what he used, declared a date by which, after which, no paper records. So that was a Danda approach. And it was successful. You see, the only public hospital where OPD also goes through HIS. And another experience on telemedicine. You see, all the time my doctor friends have been telling, all platforms which you give for telemedicine, so many knobs I have to handle. The thing is, a kind of awareness, yes, and they say, okay, not more than 4 or 5 buttons I should touch to come to this thing, whatever I want to do it. And sometimes, incentivization, in public sector, we don't have any such kind of thing. A duty, whatever duty he has to do within that time, he does that. Was a very interesting example which Dr. Ganpati also touched in his experience. But I had another interesting experience when we were, setting up this system in West Bengal. That was a system, very limited this thing for tropical diseases. The super specialty hospital in Calcutta was linked with 2 peripheral centers, one in Cooch Behar, extreme north of West Bengal, and another one on the east. And you see, all our experiments were done with the state health department, and immediately after some time when the whole thing is installed, they will call for the figures of usage of the system. Dismal, very poor usage. And then suddenly, I will talk to the director of health services there or secretary health. Because, sir, how come, we have given you this system with all connectivity, everything. Why don't you use? He will issue some kind of, directive from, please use that, or, you will be questionable and all. Suddenly, see, the system was installed by one of the state corporation unit. Immediately, whenever that kind of directive will come, the local doctor, the in charge of that hospital, will rush to my, state. Okay, please train us again. We don't know. The system is lying, and please, can you tell us? Because the previous doctor has gone, nobody knows how to use it. It happened thrice, but I asked my organization there. IIT Kharagpur was the mentor, and please, anyway, when they asked that, you do that. But ultimately, the result was heartening. Question: once they started using it, the local doctor, just because they were in touch with the specialists, it was a great learning experience for them. You see, as Dr. Ganpati also cited, after some time, they themselves become expert in diagnosing and all. So this was one thing. And Tripura, basically, one of the biggest incentive of the local peripheral doctor was that at least he was in touch with his peers. So that turned out mainly in the success of the program, where usage was increased dramatically.
So I think some very good points. I'll just take this question. One, very good points on how to get the doctors motivated, creating incentives for them, making it easy for them to use, creating a network by which they can find mentors, peers, and we talked about it as being a marketing tool. And of course, there are some doctors who are going to be innovative. So you got to pick them. Yep. I think with that we can take a question. Yeah, go ahead.
Not a question, but something to continue with what the doctors. I'm a doctor. I'm a cancer surgeon. And as a cancer surgeon, what we need, if we need to have a affordable thing, first thing is, foremost is that we have to understand what is that affordable thing. Are we going to practice the same methodology which the Western people are following? Like if I talk about this simple breast cancer screening, we are talking about mammography in the West. In US and all, we are talking about mammography. But is the mammography the right methodology for the developing country? Can we do with just clinical breast examination? Or is just a simple cell breast examination, which costs nothing? If we are talking about pap smear, it costs something. But can we do with just simple cervical examination, cervicography, which is hardly any cost? It just needs a real-time image to be transmitted to the doctor sitting at the center, and it doesn't take any cost. But the industries will not get into it because it is not making any money for them, right? So what we I have actually, as an Indian Cancer Winners Association, this thing, I have developed a network, a very fine network of manpower, where we have done with 4P models, where we have taken professionals, patients, physicians, local physicians, and the professionals who are sitting at this thing, the patient, the local patient, like cancer patient. I'm dealing with cancer, so I've taken cancer winners to that, and some local social people, and we have developed a network. For the last 1 year, I have been looking out for the technology to link them up. But I am getting one hemoglobin from one company, one blood pressure instrument from another company, from somewhere, some other company. So I am not able to network the whole thing. I am not able to get something which can cater to my need.
So we have technology searching for doctors and doctors searching for technology.
Yeah, the other very important thing that what we are failing to understand, doctors are your main customers, not the patients. Patients are the benefiters, but we are your customers. So you have not taken us into your system to see what actually we require. We are going to purchase your system. So till now, I have not found a system exactly which will cater to my needs, like a cervicogram, of course, the blood pressure. See, I need a cancer screening project. So I have this cancer system already set. I know what is the requirement, but to get integrated into a very simple system, that I am not able to get.
Understood.
The other thing is that just this, what we have been doing till now in telemedicine is we have been going to the only to the public sectors, government aided. But let me tell you, I am working in the private. I have been working with the private in the periphery. I have been working with quacks also. I have been working with them, and I have been able to streamline them. I have been able. Now, if we give them this, and if I talk to them, I am coming out with such a project, and this project is there with me for the last 2 years. For the last 2 years, I have been thinking if I can add something to this, and I have been coming to all the conferences and this just to get such networking done for me. And believe me, people are ready to accept it. Doctors are ready to accept it. But we do not have the right product for them right now.
We don't have the right product. That's your contention. Okay, there's a question here and then there are 2 more there.
Okay. My question is not...
If you can just introduce yourself.
I'm A.K. Sangal. I'm closely... Bedi and Satyamurthy know me very well. I'm ex-ISRO group director. I have been closely associated with telemedicine for the last 10 years. Now, I'm talking about the interoperability. We at ISRO were the first people who had started interoperability of various vendors, systems, at a time of 5 or 6 years back, but none of the system was working. We wanted, Mr. Satyamurthy may agree with me, we wanted that each and every machine should be interoperable so that we could make a national grid in the country. None of the vendor was ready to share their source code. The reason being, everybody was afraid of their businesses, and that happens. There was not much competition. Everybody wanted to survive. They didn't want interoperability. That was the time. Now the time has come for telemedicine to take off, and there are various avenues up to the periphery centers, through e-health devices, and if every vendor, out of 7 or 8 vendors we had in CDAC, IIT Kharagpur, SGPGI, and then one OTRI, Karishma, so many vendors were there, and only few have survived. Now, if those 2, my advice, if 2 or 3 have to survive, they have to work with Quantitech, and then find out a solution using the government platform, including the legal platform where, health is government, it is in government sector, and come out with a solution where the healthcare is multiplied and it's taken care of.